Okay. Um, hello, everybody. I have no idea if this is working. First time using YouTube's like actual live studio, so um, let me know in the chat if you guys can like hear me and stuff. If the quality is okay, everything's good, and if that's the case, we can go ahead and get started with today's tutorial. Loud and clear, perfect. Anyway, awesome, sounds good. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna keep this kind of quick and concise. I'm not gonna draw it out too long. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Varun Patel. I go by Blue Hand Coding on TikTok, and this is my Replit rep event for the month of March. So if you're not familiar, rep events are just events where we, the reps, come out, interact with the community. So I like to do these coding workshops. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to go ahead and we're going to be building a weather app. So this is really good for beginners because we'll be working with requests, we'll be working with Openweathermap, the API, and we'll be working with tkinter. So you'll have like a fully fledged GUI. You'll learn some principles with how to structure your applications and stuff like that. So I'm here on the Replit website and replit.com. I'm sure you guys are good with that though. And what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to click here to create a REPL, and you're going to look up tkinter. So it'll say tkinter templates, name it whatever you want to name it. I've already actually gone ahead and set one up. But you can click create REPL, and you should open up into an environment that looks something like this. And also before I continue, if at any point anyone has questions or anything like that, please go ahead and stop me so I don't go too far ahead. But you should be here at this screen. And if we go ahead and we actually click run, we'll see a little interface pop up like this. So we'll be making a little application just like this within Replit. And before I continue, I actually want to break down these couple lines of code here so we can understand how tkinter works if this is your first time working with it, and what the structure of the program is. First things first, of course, we're going to be importing tkinter as TK. So we're just hitting a sort of shorthand with how to reference that tkinter library. Then we're going to instantiate a TK object. So what this is going to return is a window or a root, and this is sort of like the main page where everything will just get thrown on. So you'll see I'm able to set the title of this application right here. I'm able to set its geometry. So right now it's 300 by 300. But if I stop this and change it to like 500 by 300, we can see that the change in the size is responsive to the code. And then to add elements onto my window, I can create labels, tk.label, that's the text right here. I can pack that on, I can throw it on, and then we have tk.button, so it's a little button right here. It doesn't do anything, but we're able to put it on. And then when we want our window to sort of show up, to be on the screen, to be the application we interact with, we call this main loop method this main loop function from our TK library. And then it'll show up on our screen. We'll be able to interact with it and do stuff like that. So are we all good with that? That's sort of really quick general breakdown of what tkinter is, how these lines of code sort of function. It's very linear. I also know there's a little bit of a delay with YouTube nowadays, or not nowadays, but with the streaming that I'm using. Because I used to use StreamYard, and the delay with that was like 0. So it's a lot easier for me to like communicate with you guys. But let me know if I should go back and touch this again. But with that out of the way, we now need to sort of look, or I sort of want to show you what the end product is, what it is that we're going to be building. So I actually drew up a little sketch of what our weather app will look like. It'll be very straightforward, very simple, but I believe that it'll give you guys sort of the foundation you guys will need to expand upon it, to make it your own, to add extra features and stuff like that. So you'll see I have this sort of screen that's cut into four boxes. And in my top left box, we have the current temperature, the main temperature. We have a sort of image next to it. And then below these top two boxes, we have the min and max temperature. And then you have like the humidity, what the temperature feels like. We can add things like the pressure and stuff like that, the wind speed. So we sort of cut it up into these compartments. And you'll understand why I did that, why I have these sort of coordinates as well, a little bit later on when we figure out how to sort of stack these elements together, sort of put them into a grid, into like a coordinate system. But to make this happen, we need to get this weather data. So first things first, you're going to want to go and head over to a website called Openweathermap.org. Now, Openweathermap provides weather information in an easily usable web API. So basically, a web API is a service where I, as a programmer, can send a request to Openweathermap. I'll be like, hey, Openweathermap, I really need you to send me the weather information, the current weather information for New York City. Openweathermap will be like, okay, we're going to go ahead and load up all of our information from our database and then send it to you so that you can use that information within your application to build something similar to this. So it may ask you to make an account. Go ahead, it's free. Everything with this application that we're going to be building will be free, by the way, so you don't have to worry about any of that. So once you go ahead and make that, you're going to go ahead and you'll have your account, and you'll click My API Keys. And this will take you to another page. It'll look something like this. Mine is different because I hid my API keys. I deleted them from the HTML so nobody can steal them. But you should be able to generate a key, so you can name it whatever you want to name it. I named mine Replit Demo. And the key will pop up right here. Now what you're going to do with that is you're going to take that key, come back into REPL, and in your side menu, you should be able to see something called secrets. As you can see, I sort of already made mine, but you want to make a secret called Weather API, and then you're going to paste whatever the value of your API key was. So you might be curious, you might be wondering, Varun, why is this a secret? Why are we saving these to environment variables? Why don't we just paste this into our code? That's a good question. And the answer to that is our API keys are extremely sensitive. These are sensitive pieces of information that are directly linked to me. Think about it like this. In our situation, our API key isn't going to use any money because we're using sort of like the free plan. But if we were a user who was building an application and we were paying money every time our API key was used, we wouldn't want someone to steal that API key and then use it without us knowing. And that is why we're hiding it under a secret environment variable and not just pasting it directly into our code. Because let's say John wanted to build the same project that I am showing you guys. He can open up my REPL and use my API key. But because it's in my secrets, he won't be able to do that. So that's sort of the importance of using these keys and keeping them in environment variables. So once we've gone ahead and saved our key to the environment variable, the next thing we need to do is go ahead. Oh, what do I need to do after getting my API key? So you're going to go ahead and copy it from here. And then once you get that, come back into Replit, and in your sort of side menu, I know mine looks a little bit different, but in your side menu under the Tools section, right here at the bottom, you should be able to see something that says Secrets. And then under that Secrets, we're going to be setting an environment variable, which I've already gone ahead and set for myself. But we're going to be setting an environment variable called Weather API. And then the value of that Weather API will just be whatever we got our API key to be. So whatever this ends up being, which in my case, it's blank because I don't want to expose my API keys out to the internet for the same reasons that I outlined earlier. I think that's a good point for me to stop. Are we all okay? Are we all good? I don't want to move too far ahead without checking in on you guys. So just let me know, and then I'll move on. Oh, I'm thirsty. My mouth is so dry. Okay. We all good, folks? Okay. I'm going to assume we're good because I'm not seeing anything in chat. So let's go ahead and continue. So once we've gone ahead and got our API key set up, the next thing we need to do is download our dependencies, the things we need for our program to work. So if we come down here into our shell, let me close this side menu actually and make this a little bigger. But down here at the bottom, we're going to want to go ahead and install a couple libraries that'll make our life a lot easier. The first thing will be the requests libraries. We're going to say pip install requests. And the point of the request library is for us to send, as I sort of spoke about earlier, the information to the Openweathermap API and then get our information back for our application to use. So that is the requests library. The second library we'll need to install is called Pillow. So pip install Pillow. Now, Pillow is a library that allows for image manipulation. So if we come back to the sort of diagram, the quick drawing I had, you'll see that we have this little sun image. And for this image to get put onto our screen, we'll be using the Pillow library, which I think I put the right name for it. There we go. Okay, it's working. I saw a warning for a second, so I got a little scared. So that's all good. So far what we've done is we've made our account with Openweathermap and we've retrieved our API key. We've then taken our API key and saved it to a Replit environment variable to keep it safe from anyone who, would do something bad with it. And then we finally gone ahead and installed the requests and the Pillow library. So the request library is for us to communicate with the API, and the Pillow library is for image manipulation so that we can have our little sun image in our app. Two more things rather, for a little bit of a setup. We then need to figure out, we have our API key, but now we need to retrieve the URL for the API we'll be using, if that makes sense. So I'm actually going to go ahead and paste this link. This is from the Openweathermap documentation. I've gone ahead and pasted it in the chat. Now our app will be collecting current data, current weather data, as you can see right here. And in order to make that API call, we'll need to make a request using our request library to this URL right here. And again, I'll copy and paste this into the chat as well. Now you'll see right here, this text in orange, this is where we'll fill in our data. So we'll have to put in our own custom latitude, our own custom longitude, and then we'll put in our API key as well, which we already know how to access. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, bring it back into our code, and actually clear all of this boilerplate code that was there before, and close this as well. So we have our URL like so, and now we just need 3 pieces of evidence to make it a valid URL, because if I were to visit this right now, it wouldn't work. So what we need to do is we then need to get our latitude and our longitude. And I'll be using a website called latlong.net to do this. So I left that in chat as well. So for our app, let's just say we want to use New York City as our place. Bot detected. Interesting. Let's try that again. There we go. I don't know why that came up. But we now have a latitude and a longitude for New York City. And we can give that latitude and longitude to the Openweathermap API, and it'll give us the weather data for that associated area. So we'll copy this, copy our latitude. We'll save that to a variable, a constant variable called lat. And then our lon will be this number right here. Boom. So far, we have our latitude, which would go in right here, and our longitude, which would go in right here. The next thing we need to do is open up and retrieve our API key from the environment variable where we saved it. So in order to do that, in order to access our environment variables, we'll need the OS library. So import OS, and then we'll say our API key is equal to os.environ, so that stands for environment, and we'll put weather API. Because if you guys remember, that's what we saved it under. If we go back to our secrets, it's saved under the name weather API. So now we have everything we need to make a full, complete, thorough URL. So now we can turn this into an F string and just format this with the correct variable name. So this is lat, all caps, lon, all caps, and API underscore key, all caps. So again, I'll stop right here, double check with you guys. We all good? All good. Awesome. So quick recap. Every time I'll stop, I'll just do a quick recap. What we've done is we have retrieved the URL, right? This is the URL we're requesting information from. And for Openweathermap to know what information we want, we have to give it things like our latitude and our longitude, which we got from this website right here. And we have to give it our API key so it knows that we're a user, right? It doesn't want to give information out to anyone. It wants to give information out to a registered user, which we loaded from our environment variable. So before we go ahead and actually start building our GUI or app, let's see if this works. So in order to test this out, we need to use our requests library. So we'll say import requests. Again, request is how we'll make that connection to the server and get the information back. So we'll say response is equal to requests.get our URL. So the request library is going to say, hey, I want to get the information that's at this URL, and whatever the server sends back will be saved to this response variable. So then in order to see, we're going to want to print response.statuscode. And again, I'll just code this part real quick and I'll let you guys know, what it is I'm actually doing. And then we'll say data is equal to response.json, and we'll print data. Okay. So bear with me here. We'll stop this and run it again. So now we have something in our console. This is under the console tab. Now I asked it to print me two different things, a status code and the data. The data is probably pretty self-explanatory, but the status code is, have you ever guys, seen 404 not found? When you load up like a URL that doesn't actually exist. Well, whenever you get information from a website and it does work, it sends a status code 200. So when I printed this out, I just wanted to verify that everything's working just fine. There aren't any issues or anything like that. And in this case, there aren't. So that's a good thing. The next thing is we have our data, which I loaded into a JSON format so that we could sort of access it like we could access a Python dictionary. So as you can see, it's pretty messy, but if we break it down, we can see we get the coordinates back that we entered. We can see stuff like if there's clouds, if it's overcast. We can see the temperature. We can see what it feels like, the minimum temperature, the maximum temperature, pressure, and humidity. So we're getting a lot of information to work with. The only thing I'm noticing is that this looks weird. Temperature min 277.1. That doesn't look right. I've never heard the minimum to be that high. So I think what it is we're in the wrong units. So in order to go back into the right units, right? I think this is in some other, it's not Fahrenheit, I know that for sure. So in order to get into the right units, we actually need to manipulate our URL a little bit and tell Openweathermap that we actually want our data to be in Fahrenheit, not whatever this is. So in order to do that, it actually might be in Kelvin, who knows if it's super cold. But in order to do that, we need to add units equals imperial, and then add that sort of and sign again. So you'll see how all of these sort of parameters are separated by and signs. So when we run this again, now we get something that makes more sense. So it's 47.95 degrees Fahrenheit in New York City. So just again, when we didn't have this, I'm pretty sure our information was getting retrieved in Kelvin. So we have to add this sort of line of code, units equals imperial, and I can actually paste this into chat. Actually, I'll paste the whole link into chat, so there's not any issues. Ta-da! Okay, so that should make your life easier, and this will get our information in imperial units, or as we know it, Fahrenheit and stuff like that. So cool. We now know that we're accessing all of our data. Everything is working, our API key is valid, we're getting that beautiful 200 status code. So now it is time to do some coding magic and start building up our weather app. Now, I will preface, before I go on, I will be taking a class-based, object-oriented sort of approach to this instead of a sort of procedural approach, because that's something I prefer. If you guys want me to, I sort of don't want to do a procedural approach because I feel like the class-based approach is a little bit more cleaner. But if it's a little confusing, stop me. I'll go back. We'll do a quick lesson on classes if we have to. But if it does get confusing, let me know, because I know classes are not something that every beginner has touched. So let's go ahead and clear this, our little test code. We'll leave everything we have so far, and we'll add a couple things. As we saw in our boilerplate code, we have to access our tkinter library by doing import tkinter as tk. And then in order to import our images, to get our images to work, we'll import from our pillow library as well. So from pil, import image tk and image. So these are the two functions from the pillow or the pil library that we'll be using. So let's start by setting up our initial class. We'll make a class called weather app. And this class is going to actually inherit from the tk.tk class as well. So when we initialize our weather app, init self, we also want to initialize this tk class as well. And I should be taking args and quargs, but it's fine. So once we do that, this is sort of like when we saw in our boilerplate code how they had like window is equal to tk.tk. That's sort of what this line of code is doing. We're sort of creating a copy of the tk class called weather app and then customizing it to our needs. So I'm also going to escape out of that for a second, and we're going to come down here. We're going to say app is equal to weather app, and then we'll say app.mainLoop. So this will actually make the app pop up on our screen when we go ahead and run this code. So if I come back to my init method, we can then start by setting the title of our window. So the title will be weather app. So if we run this, we have to install our dependencies one more time. I think it worked. Output. There we go. So you can see our window showed up. It has the title of weather app. Now all we need to go ahead and do is set things like the geometry, and then we can start putting information onto our screen. So I'm actually going to create an attribute called self.width, and self.height. And now what this will do is we have this entire screen, right, this entire region right here, and I want my weather app to, by default, fill up the entire thing. I don't have to press this button right here. I want it to automatically open up to the full size of my, of the possible size it could be. So in order to do that, I need to access some information. So the width of my screen is equal to self.window information screen width, and this height is equal to self.window information winfo screen height. And you guys might be curious, why am I saving this to attributes when they're already a part of my class? Well, these are methods, and I don't like calling methods over and over and over again. It's really redundant. So it's better to save the response of the return value of a method to a variable one time when you use that variable over and over and over again, which is what we'll be doing in this case. So now with these two lines of code, I know what the actual width and full height of my screen are. So now I can set my geometry of my screen. So I can say self.geometry is going to be an f string, and it will be self.width, and I apologize for the background noise. There's some landscaping happening. So it'll be our self.width and our self.height. So if you stop, run this again, it should take up the entire screen now. And actually, I'm going to add this right here, this line of code, +0, +0, because you notice that our top header is missing, where it has like the title of our screen, and this should add it back. There we go. So, are we all good up to here? Just touch base with you guys one more time. That is really loud. Oh my goodness. All good? Also, I hope it's not too loud. I apologize for that. The what's it called? The leaf blower in the back. But anyway, we've subclassed our TK class to create this full window. And now we can sort of, start putting our data into the screen. It's not loud at all? Okay. So what we can do now is we're going to create a method called getWeatherData. And what this is going to do is load all of that weather data so we can access it throughout the entire class. So just like I showed you with our sort of testing, actually hold on, give me 1 second, folks. Okay, so as I showed you with our testing, we'll be doing the same thing. We'll say response is equal to requests.get our URL, which we've properly formatted up here. And then we'll say data is equal to response.json. And then we'll say self.mainData. Or actually, we'll say self.data is equal to data. Actually, hold on. We'll say self.data is equal to response.json. So this is basically, I'm creating a method within my weather app class that'll handle collecting all of the data. So if I say, if I run this, so I say self.get weather, oops, my spelling is off, data, and we print self.data, we should be able to see all the data we need. So I'll stop, run this, and we have our screen pop up, and we also have all the data we need get printed out to the console. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, we'll only be using select parts of this data and not all of it. So you'll see I have this main key, and it has the temperature, what it feels like, the temperature minimum, the temperature maximum, the humidity, and that is exactly what we need to fill out this schematic that I've drawn. So I don't need all of it. I only need all the data under the main key. So when I run this now and print self.data, I'll get only the data I want, which should be the temperature, what it feels like, the min, the max, the pressure, humidity. All good. So that data is now going to be saved as an attribute, so we can reference it in other methods as well. So are we all good with the get weather data method? Okay. I'm not seeing anything. Again, go ahead and stop me if you need to. But let's go ahead and continue. So now that we've gone ahead and retrieved all of our data, we can start putting it onto our screen. So we have our get weather data. So now we'll have a function called, or a method, sorry, called set weather data. And what this will do is just set all of our data onto our screen so we can start building up our weather application. So the first thing I want to do with this is go back to my drawing. Now what I've effectively done here is I've taken my entire screen, cut it into 4 equal segments, and in each segment I've dictated what goes there. So with this approach, the first thing I want to do is actually cut it off into 4 different boxes. And to do this, we have our entire screen. And with tkinter, you can have things called frames. And frames allow you to sort of make boxes and put them in certain areas. And I'll show you what I mean when I say that. So we'll have 4 frames. We'll call this like the temperature frame. We'll have the image frame, the min-max frame, and the extra data frame, or whatever you want to call it. So let's start by making the temperature frame. We'll call it temp frame is equal to tk.frame. And it's going to go in self. And with these frames, we have to specify, or we can, and in this case we will, specify a height and a width. So let's say we have this line at the top being my total width, or total height, or whatever. Each frame will be half of my dimension. And that's why I sort of saved it to this attribute right here. So we'll say our height is going to be the width of the entire screen divided by 2. And I'm using floor division to keep it as an integer. And then my width is going to be my, self.height. My width, self.width, my width of my frame will be my width of my entire screen divided by 2. And also, for us to see it better, to see the space it's taking up, I'll also add a background color. And we'll make it red in this case. And now to put this, if I run this, and let's add this self.set weather data, and I run this, you'll notice that nothing shows up. Because I've just created this, I haven't actually put it onto my screen. I haven't told it where it goes. So this is our temperature frame, and our temperature frame is going to go on our top left. So sort of at the coordinate 1, 1, if you will. So we'll say temperature frame dot grid. So now we have to assume this is sort of like a grid of rows and columns. So this goes in my first column in my first row. So we'll say column is equal to 1, row is equal to 1. But if I run this now, it'll show up. Well, actually, that worked. It shouldn't have worked. It's actually supposed to show up down here, but I think it's working because there aren't other, things on the screen. But this should not have worked. But actually, let's continue, and I'll show you why it won't work. Yeah. So we have our temperature frame, which is going to go up here. The next thing we need is our image frame. So we'll come here, we'll call this IMG frame. And it's basically the same thing, honestly. I can honestly just copy paste this and just change it to IMG frame. And this time, instead of making it red, we'll make this one blue. And the width and the height are the same thing because it just has to be half and all that. And our image frame is in the second column, first row. So column 2, row 1. And now if I stop and run this, it shows up next to it. So look at that. The boxes are all being filled up. They're all taking their respective sort of fourth of the screen. So we have our image frame. Next thing we have our min-max frame and our extra frame. That's what I'm just calling it. It is our extra information. And I'll do this at the same time so we can just save some time. And I'll copy both of these actually. So this will be our, we'll call it min-max frame. Copy that, paste that there. We'll make this one a green color. And our min-max is column 1, row 2. Column 1, row 2. And then we have our extra frame, where our extra data will go. This one will be yellow. And this is column 2, row 2. Now if we stop, we run this, ta-da, we have sort of a magical RGB rainbow. But what's important here is that we've effectively sectioned off parts of our screen to be used for our app. So we're all good with what I've done here with the frames and boxing off parts of the entire window. And also, you know when I said earlier how about the column 1, row 1 thing wouldn't work, is because with programming, I could also put this as like column 0, row 0, if that makes sense, like 0 index it, if you will. But because everything's relative to that, it works out just fine. So are we all good with this? What I've done here with boxing off the regions, and then we'll go ahead and we'll start putting data in. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So the first thing is actually, just for reference, I need to print out this self.data so I can see everything. Self.data. And it's going to be down here at the bottom. Okay, perfect. So the first thing I need to do is get that temperature data. We want it to be nice and big in the top left corner. So in this red box right here. So the first thing we need to do is create a label where that temperature will actually go. So we'll call this temp label is a tk.label, and it's going to go. So you know how these all went within the window? We need this to go within the frame. So it's going to go in the temperature frame, and the text itself will just be from our self.data. It'll be the temp key. And what we can do is also, since we want to make it, or actually we can go ahead and then place it within our label, or sorry, within our frame. So we'll say temp label.place, and I'll explain what this part is doing after I go ahead and code it. Equals tk.center. Okay, so I know this part is pretty straightforward. But what this is doing is, you know how our temp frames wouldn't actually show up unless we put them into the grid? Well, with putting our labels within our frames, we want it to be dead center. So in order to have it centered, we need to put it halfway in, halfway down, and then center it at the middle. So if we run this, we can see our temperature shows up really, really small in there. So let's actually go ahead and configure it so it takes up a little bit more space. So we'll say temp label.config, and we'll set a font, and it'll be a tuple. Let's set times, so Times New Roman, it's just times. We'll set it to like size 100, and then we'll make it nice and bold. So that's how we'll customize our text up. So if I stop this, run, check the output, there we go. It's looking a lot better. So it looks nice. And I can actually go ahead and format this a little bit using an F string. And we'll add the, I think it's Option Shift 8. There we go. The Fahrenheit symbol. Oops, looks like I messed something up. What did I do? Oh, these need to be single quotes. There we go. So if I run this now, after I fix that little single quote, double quote error, ta-da! Fahrenheit. And of course, if you guys are having a little issue getting that degree symbol, which I know, no one has to look it up, but I'll paste that in the chat as well, so you can copy that if you need to. So that is the degree symbol, and this looks nice. I'm gonna leave it like this with the background, so we can just, I like having this sort of, if people see this in the future, they can see how it's all sectioned off and everything, and how everything is sort of staying within the bounds of its own frame. So that is the temperature. Now let's make our way to the, so this is all the temperature part. So let me actually comment that. Temperature. And now we'll be working with our image. Now, what we could do, or a way you could expand this app is depending on the data that you get from the API, you can have different images, but I'll be using the same image for all of them, just for the sake of it being concise and easy. So on Google, I actually looked up sunny PNG, and I found this image right here, and I'll copy, where's the copy link? Copy link address, there you go. And I'll paste that in chat if you guys want the exact same image as me. It looks like the link's actually too big, never mind. But if you look it up, you should be able to find it. So what I did is I downloaded it, and after I downloaded it, I brought it into Replit. I just dragged it from like the bottom, like how Chrome downloads it, you can just drag it in. Or you can click upload a file and get it from there as well. And I saved it to the name sun.png. It doesn't have to be a PNG, but a PNG has like the nice clear backgrounds and stuff. So once I've gone ahead and done that, I can then start setting and using my image TK and image functions to have it show up. So we have the frame. The next thing we need to do is actually open our sun image. So we'll call this sun image is equal to an image TK dot photo image, and inside of these parentheses we'll put image dot open sun.png. So we're opening this image and then we're converting it to a tkinter compatible image, if that makes sense. And now what we'll do is just how we had a temp label for the temperature, we'll have a sun label for the sun. So this is a tk.label, and this will go within my image frame. And instead of configuring a text, we'll say image is equal to sun image. And we also have to sort of solidify that one more time by saying sun label dot photo is equal to sun image. This is like a weird thing that tkinter does, but it's all good. And after we do that, we do the same thing we did with the temperature label. And we just copy that sun label. This will place it halfway in, halfway down, and center it at the middle. So if we run this, our image shows up very, very big. So we actually need to go ahead and resize this a little bit so it doesn't look too clunky. So inside of where I put image.open, I can actually put .resize, and I'll put a tuple in there. And we'll resize this to like 200 by 200. And I think that'll be just okay for our needs. There we go. That looks just fine. And actually now this is starting to come together a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our background on our top two frames. So we run this now. There we go. It's all a little bit more uniform. Finally, we can make our way to the bottom two, which are pretty straightforward. So this is our min-max frame. And not min-max frame, we'll just call it min-max. And again, that's going to be our temperature max key and our temperature min key from our self.data dictionary. And actually, I want to format this a little bit nicer so it doesn't look too ugly, because it's going to sort of be stacked on top of each other like this. So to do that, we'll create a variable called min-max text. And we can format that text so it looks the right way. And we'll have an f string. First thing we'll do is put min, and then we'll put self.data, and then we'll put temp min. So it'll look like this. And then we'll add our degrees Fahrenheit as well. There we go. And then we'll have a new line. So a new line will just open up underneath our min, and we can put max. Copy this, and then we just change it out to temp max, like so. Then we just do this. It's really like a lot of rinse and repeat, but we can just copy this from our temp label. Boom, boom. We'll call this our min max label. Boom, 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 boom. Now our min max label will go within our min max frame, and the text will just be this text variable that we've created up here. So min max text. And we don't need to sort of make it as big as we made our temperature. So we'll make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it times like 40, and let's not make it bold either. And finally, we'll put it within halfway in, halfway down, center in the middle. So if we stop, run it again, ta-da! So our min and our max data are also showing up. And actually, I don't really like the dashes, so let's go ahead and get rid of those. Get rid of that, get rid of that. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks nicer. I like that more. So once we do that, we can then, let's get rid of the background color on that. Take another look-see at how it looks. Hey, this is starting to come together real nice. So we've got our current temperature, our image, the minimum temperature for the day, the maximum temperature for the day. And according to our diagram, all we need now is what it feels like and the humidity. So that's the last two. So we have feels like down here, and we have humidity as well. We'll leave pressure, because like who really cares about the pressure? So we have temperature, image, min-max, and now we'll just call this our extra. And it's really just the same deal as what we did with our min-max. So I can actually just copy that, bring it down, we'll call this extra text, and our extra label, boom, 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 boom. And our extra text, instead of using our min and our max, oh, hello. So instead of using our min and our max, we'll be using our feels like, and we'll be using our humidity. There we go. And the key for feels like is feels underscore like, so we'll paste that there. And then the key for our humidity is just humidity. And again, we can get rid of the Fahrenheit as well. Actually, we can keep it for the feels like, but we'll get rid of it for the humidity. Add a % instead. Our extra label will go within our extra frame, and the text will be our extra text. And again, let's see how the size works. And if we need to make it smaller, we'll make it smaller. But actually, that looks just fine. So we can go ahead and get rid of the background yellow. Run this. There we go. That is a really simple looking, like weather app, I guess. I wonder, actually no, I think this is fine. I think we can set this, and I don't like the color in the background is what's bothering me. So let's actually go ahead and set the background. And instead of going back and changing the background directly for each frame, we can just change the background for the... Actually, let's do it for frames. So we'll say, let's see, I think it's called like sky blue. I'm trying to remember. It's called deep sky blue. Let's try that. So background is, because I'm looking at the color thing right now on my other screen. Deep sky blue. Does that work? Ooh, I like that. .config, there we go. So the background of the text also has to be deep sky blue. If I run this, that should work. Awesome, 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 awesome. So I mean, if you want to, you can go back and change the colors of the text and whatnot. Actually, let's do that. No harm done. We'll just copy this line of code right here. So we'll config the text, config the frame. We don't have to config it. We can do it right here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So if we stop and run this, please work. Hey! I mean, it's not super pretty if you want my honest opinion, but this is, I mean, it's a weather app. I mean, that's what it is. You get the weather, you get a nice image. That's really it, honestly. So any questions, anything you guys want me to go back over? Like I said, I want to keep this one short, so I won't stick around too long, but pretty awesome. I'll say that for sure. So I'm not seeing anything, so I'm honestly just going to go ahead and end the stream right there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely encourage you guys to sort of take this and remix it, make the images a little bit more dynamic, make this look a little bit more prettier. And of course, if you do want to reach out to me, all of the socials are down in the description. So if you have any questions, or if you want to share, your remix of this, I would love to take a look. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.